Good morning, I'm Schlanger from the LaRouche organization with your daily video update for May 6th, 2025. The topic today is going to be that it's important now for President Trump to have a sharp focus on addressing the hotspots in the world. That we've seen Trump in the last couple of days focus on such things as reopening Alcatraz, talking about deporting immigrants to Rwanda, which is something the British tried unsuccessfully. Instead, he should be focused on solving these hotspots, and a good place to start would be to participate in the victory celebration May 9th in Moscow. Now, I'm going to go through these hotspots, but I think the important point here is that Trump was elected as a president to stop the wars. He pledged he would stop the Ukraine war in 24 hours. It's a difficult situation. He seems to be making an effort. But there's more that can be done, much more, including cleaning out his cabinet of neocons and war hawks and engaging much more directly with President Putin, with President Xi of China and others. So let's start with the hotspots, in this case, India and Pakistan. This is a potentially nuclear confrontation. The two sides are mobilizing troops. They're prepared for fighting. But there also have been attempts, especially by Pakistan, but also by India, to achieve a negotiated agreement to commit both sides to fighting terrorism. You have Russia, China, and Iran in the diplomatic mix engaging in discussions. And yesterday, Prime Minister Modi had a long talk with President Putin. Pakistan at one point hinted that there might have been a so-called third party or a British involvement in the terrorism. This is something that should be investigated. There needs to be a full investigation of where this terrorist operation came from, given the history of the CIA and especially of MI6 in the British and the Indian subcontinent. It wouldn't be at all shocking to find that the British, who are committed to breaking apart the BRICS, committed to breaking the normalization process of U.S. and Russia relations, that they would be looking for more hotspots to unleash. So there has to be a full investigation, but starting from the standpoint of ending the confrontation. Now then, Ukraine. The Zelensky rejected President Putin's offer for a ceasefire around Victory in Europe Day. Not only did they reject the ceasefire, but they threatened very clearly that they might attack the parade in Moscow on May 9th. Now, meanwhile, Ukrainian forces marched in London yesterday carrying symbols of white supremacy. Now, why is London supporting the Nazis? Well, that's an interesting question because there's a long history of that. I can't go through the details now, but at Executive Intelligence Review, if you click on and search British role in bringing Hitler to power, you'll find out a lot about it. It's not surprising that the British would be pushing for commemorating Hitler rather than the victory over Hitler. Now, along with the Ukraine problem, you have Europe is all in on the sabotage of the peace agreement. It's very much like what happened in April 2022 when Boris Johnson went in on behalf of NATO to scuttle the agreement that was reached between Zelensky and Putin. Now, the idea of the coalition of the willing, the preparation to fight a war against Russia, it's an absurd concept, but they're betting the house on it. They're preparing to issue huge volumes of war bonds to fund a military escalation against Russia. And they're at the same time attacking governments or political parties that are opposed to the war. In Romania, they canceled an election, so another election was held, and the same result. The anti-war candidate was first with 40%, and the pro-Europe, pro-war candidate had 20%. They're trying to ban the Alternative for Deutschland in Germany as a right-wing extremist party. What's right-wing extremist about negotiations with Russia and restoring German-Russian relations. So again, we see the insanity of the European Union. European Union foreign ministers will be meeting in Warsaw tomorrow, and that promises to be another ratchet up of the anti-Russian propaganda. Then you have the Gaza, Southwest Asia, and what can you say about Netanyahu's cabinet deciding that they're now going to have a conquer and hold strategy toward Gaza? All that means is that the ethnic cleansing is underway. It's a full commitment by the Netanyahu government to clean out the Palestinians. How to solve the Palestinian problem? Get rid of the Palestinians. They're still cutting off food, water, and medication. They've destroyed the hospitals. And now you have the Hostage and Missing Family Forum referring to this as the Smotrich-Netanyahu plan. And they denounced the plan, saying that Netanyahu is giving up on bringing back the hostages. Now, I want to read to you from statements by Ami Ayalon, the former head of Shin Bet and former head of the Israeli Navy, very respected official from the security side of Israeli politics. And here's what he said in an op-ed in the Guardian newspaper on April 29th. The truth is that our hostages in Gaza have been abandoned in favor of the government's messianic ideology and by a prime minister in Benjamin Netanyahu who is desperate to cling to power for his own personal gain. He went on to say that 70% of the Israeli public supports a comprehensive end to the war in Gaza in return for bringing the hostages home, and an election as soon as possible so that his government can be replaced. And he pointed out that there are now 150,000 Israelis who have signed petitions and letters demanding an end to the war, and there have been increasing numbers marching in the streets to protest Netanyahu's policy. Now, I want to repeat the first part of his statement again, because this is not anti-Semitism, it's not some right-wing Jew hater who's making the statement, but a top historic Israeli security official who's critical of the policy. And here's what Ayalon said. The truth is that our hostages in Gaza have been abandoned in favor of the government's messianic ideology and by a prime minister in Netanyahu desperate to cling to power for his own personal gain. Our government, Ayalon continues, is undermining the democratic functions of the state to shore up and protect its own power. It is forcing us into a perpetual war with no achievable military objectives, which can only result in more loss of life and hatred. Again, this is from the highest level of Israeli security and intelligence, critical of Netanyahu. Now, where is President Trump in this? In these three cases, India, Pakistan, there's very little we've heard from Trump on the India-Pakistan situation. Going back to Biden, the U.S. was trying to break India away from Russia. Well, President Trump could play a role in issuing statements on the necessity for negotiations rather than war. Secondly, on Ukraine, here's where Trump can move toward a peace agreement by supporting the Russian commemoration of the victory 80 years ago over the Nazis, which was based on a Soviet-U.S. alliance. And then finally on the Gaza situation, why is the United States silently continuing to support genocide in Gaza while sending weapons and financial aid and doing cover-up for the Israelis at the United Nations? So these are areas where Trump can show that he really is a man of peace. And this is what's needed from the United States. Not just slogans, not just messages, not just Trump popping up on his social media dressed up as the Pope. What's needed is leadership, and leadership for peace. And that's why it's so significant that people should pay attention to what Helga Zepp-LaRouche and the LaRouche organization are doing in building an international peace coalition to bring about a peace based on a new security architecture and a new development architecture. I'll have links in the description section for you, and that's my report for